this chapter sort of confirmed, at least for me, that we might be here for a while. And what I mean by that is that I don't think this fight is going to end by the next chapter. I think we still have 2 chapters minimum left for this fight. And that is because of the Gaolang section. It seems like we are going to be elaborating a lot more on his character, specifically his relationship with Rama. Now, I try to look back and hey, maybe some people can remind me because it's been a while since I've read Ashura, but I've seen both of Gaolang's fights in the Annihilation Tournament. We haven't really gotten the specifics of what exactly is the relationship between Gaolang and Rama, specifically why Gaolang reveres Rama so much, and we get hints of that in this chapter as Gaolang is fighting Agito. And I'll talk a lot, I'll dwell a lot on Gaolang's character here because I think there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Gaolang. But hey, I've talked long enough as an introduction. Let's go into the chapter itself that is called Karmic Backlash, and it starts off where we left off in the last chapter. So it looked like in the last chapter Agito had landed his attack on Gaolang when he launched his straight punch at his face. And moving on from that moment, the weight and size difference of Agito and Gaolang is noted to here, to which we have the narrators sort of like put a bait and switch, you could say, because he says, well, have the size difference usually means a difference in strength as well. And we know Agito is taller and weighs more, probably has a lot more muscle as well, right? At least I would assume so. So based on this first part where we see on the first page, you would think, yeah, Agito has probably got the edge on strength. The narrator on the second page sort of backtracks from this idea, and he says that is usually the case. To which we see that that blow that we thought landed, or at least I thought it landed, on Gaolang's face didn't actually land on Gaolang's face. He dodges it in the nick of time, and with that launches a counter that lands on Agito's face. Now this counter is very unique because it isn't a boxing technique or a Muay Thai technique as well, which is something we'll actually discover as we're going later on in the chapter itself. But as Gaolang had tilted his head forward to avoid the attack, he launched this counter blow at Agito. And Agito, he gets pretty hurt by this attack. You could tell it did damage to him, and he's, reeling backwards, also gaining some distance as well. And this is where we get Katihara actually call what the attack Gaolang just used. And it is a double straight right punch, basically. And though I don't know much about martial arts, Katihara does say that it is involved more so in karate, more so than Muay Thai or boxing. And Jerry sort of confirms this idea as well. And so it seems like we're getting more techniques from various different martial arts, different striking techniques basically, that Gaolang is sort of incorporating more into his fighting style. We do know that he already does this already. He did try to integrate boxing and Muay Thai. We had that explanation from Rama in Kengan Ashura, where there was sort of this, striking type of style, where Gaolang is now no longer just like, the best Muay Thai practitioner or the best boxer. He is a striking specialist. So it plays into the idea a lot more, but it also shows that, yeah, Gaolang had grown his arsenal over the years. But then we have Liu doing the same thing. Well, let me not say he's doing the same thing. He's sort of reiterating the same point that I think Yamashita did during the fight between Gaolang and Gerada. And that is that, Liu says, public athletes or combat athletes more specifically are typically jobbers, kind of like how Yamashita was also saying, like, hey, look, people that use, boxing and judo, these different types of martial arts tend to be jobbers for the most part, but that also acts as a testament of strength because they're actually strong in the real world, it is what it is there. But he's sort of trying to drill it into our heads that it's not a surprise that Gaolang is strong because he is a master of these various types of martial arts. But with that, we then have have Gaolang closing this distance between him and Agito at this point, and basically trying to bring the fight to him. And it seems like he's trying to use his elbows to strike at him. In fact, we do see blows here that are like pow pow pow, so there are strikes that land on Agito, although he probably blocks those attacks. But eventually at one point, and this is a very small part of the chapter, we actually see Agito's left hand, it starts to bleed a bit from a cut from Gaolang's attacks basically. But with that, we have Gaolang, now he's in a lot more closer in range. He launches another elbow at Agito, and this time Agito avoids that entire situation by using a front kick to basically push Gaolang away from him. And while he basically, you know, puts distance between him and Gaolang at this point, because he probably can't take Gaolang's pressure right now, he then has the thought in his head that yeah, he is sort of this striking specialist, right? He's transcended just Muay Thai and boxing and just meeting the two. He's at a higher level now. But then we have, I think this is probably the most interesting part of this chapter, besides the Rama stuff, but we then have the Gaolang style all-rounder striking technique. So we have a name for what Gaolang is using here. So that's very interesting that now it's a fully fledged martial arts at this point. The Gaolang style is actually real, but with that, Agito has a change in tactics. Now he's going to go for a grapple at this point, so he starts, you know, taking the low stance and just charges at Gaolang. Very simple. We've seen him use this before. This is how Gaolang got his ass whipped last time by Agito. But as Agito is closing in, Gaolang's knee meets Agito in the face, but it doesn't actually hit, or let me not say it doesn't hit, it does sort of land, but he is using formless, so he kind of slithers out of that attack. And he slithers towards the left side of Gaolang, so he's trying to get around him that way. But Gaolang has got his number, right? And he launches an elbow right on Agito's temple. So it seems to land, and I think it does, but Agito uses formless again. Now this time he's not directly to the side of him, he's now proceeding to go behind Gaolang at this point. But Gaolang, he narrowly avoids getting grabbed by Agito here. Again, we're seeing why Gerada chose to basically stay and counter here in this example. Gaolang has pretty much found a way to cope with someone who is trying to grapple him. But as Agito misses his grab, he's sort of falling forwards, and we actually see an attack coming from Gaolang at this point, and it's a kick. However, Agito uses formless to completely dodge that attack, and this time we go to Yamashita and Akiyama, and they're like, wow, this is pretty intense of a situation here. But it is at this point that Yamashita sort of addresses something that you probably would have seen in the chapter itself, and that is the fact that, yeah, Gaolang is on the offensive here. He's sort of landing way more strikes on Agito than the other way around. But thanks to the formless, Agito has probably dispersed the damage that he would have taken from those strikes basically. But all of Gaolang's strikes are pretty fatal. And I would say it's fatal not only in the sense that the strikes themselves are actually powerful, but also the fact that Gaolang's pressure seems to be incredibly good. So he can basically have a stacking effect where multiple things go wrong if he's on top of you long enough, basically. And that sounds mad homo, but hey. But while this conversation is happening between Yamashita and Akiyama, the fight itself is still happening, and Agito is still, you know, using the formless with Gaolang striking at Agito, trying to get him. And you have Katihara, you know, he's talking about how Gaolang's defense is just
pretty good, like all around. And this is one of the most important points in this entire tournament, at least for Gaolang's performance. I've said that Gaolang's performance is very good in this arc, but yeah, his defenses have been airtight. Like Jiraiya couldn't get him, Justin kinda got him with the Panther Bullet, but unfortunately, Gaolang had sort of accounted for a situation like that and had a backup plan that was in place almost before the fight even started. Well, actually right as the fight started actually. But they're also surprised at how Agito is doing, because like, hey, it looks like Agito has sort of taken those hits, but he's still doing pretty well. Like, did he dodge all of that, or what is exactly happening? And it is at this point in which we see Agito's state, and yeah, those attacks that Gaolang was launching at him, some didn't have an effect. But there was one type of attack that seemed to hurt Agito the most, and that is attacks that came specifically from his right hand. And this was the hand that Agito himself had broken in the Annihilation tournament 3 years ago. So that's where the whole karmic backlash title of the chapter comes in, because the strikes that Gaolang lands with his right hand are doing the most damage to him, even in formless. We then get a recap of course, how Gaolang got to his hand being that powerful, because it's now stronger than ever. And that is because he basically trained it a lot during the time skip, to where now it's basically his greatest weapon. Like, his defeat is now his greatest weapon at this point. But as we're getting that information, we get extra information about Gaolang's backstory, and that is the fact that he lived in a pretty poverty-stricken village. So we're getting some backstory here, and I'm really excited for this. But while he was, living in a place where you have a shortage of food, you have a shortage of resources that you could use, Gaolang, as a child in a place like that, had to either kill or steal to get, to basically survive at this point. And it seems like he had a family as well. So to provide for them and himself, he got into basically underground fighting in his own area, to where we hear he would even fight basically 4 days in the week, or 4 times in a week. So maybe he would have multiple fights a day just to make money. It was a matter of survival for Gaolang. But even as a child in that situation, he managed to defeat most of his opponents. So Gaolang was talented from a very young age, fighting to survive from a very young age. But even in that situation, he is then thinking to himself that he probably would have died a nameless warrior if it wasn't for Rama for saving him. Now, this is probably something we'll hear about in the next chapters, because we don't get it here, as we're getting out of this flashback basically, with Gaolang launching the God Glow against Agito here. And again, you can sort of see his face. It seems like the actual attack coming towards Agito's face has a force of its own as well, like a shockwave that goes before it, But as it seems like it lands on Agito's face, we then have Agito pulling what was basically what Gaolang was doing in the last fight that he was just in, where he diverts the God Glow attack. Again, this is one of Gaolang's strongest moves, with his left hand. So Gaolang hits his left hand, and now this is a sacrificial move right here, and might mean that Agito's left hand might not be as usable as the fight is going on. But Gaolang, he's stunned by this. He's like, that was impossible, so he didn't calculate for that. But with that, we have a dragon shot launched by Agito that is basically aimed towards Gaolang's chest at this point, and we don't see it land. Now I'm skeptical, because Sandrovich and Daro, they've played games on me. The last time I said, oh yeah, definitely a blow landed here, it didn't. Gaolang had dodged it. And so I'm gonna have to default to basically learning from my previous failures and saying, look, it might be that Gaolang finds a way to cope with the dragon shot because he knows about it and might come up with something. But yeah, pretty devastating blow to take if he takes it clean. And what a good chapter. I loved this chapter, especially the backstory portion. Even though it was fairly short, I think we're still getting more, and it's showing promise in terms of what this fight offers, at the very least, for the character of Gaolang. Because I remember I had my discussion with Edward on the semifinals, and I said, yeah, this is probably going to be 3 chapters, because the only other things that would extend this fight more would be, you know, flashbacks explaining certain new moves, and I didn't think we were going to get any of those. But if we're getting flashbacks, that to me indicates that, yeah, we're gonna be here for a while. I'm gonna have to get comfortable. And yeah, that's it. That's the chapter review and my thoughts on it. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.